Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Sailing, Heaven-Defying, second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates. Chapter 81. Crocodile reached out and picked up Beanos's bounty list, grinning with a sinister smile. A kid who can fight Hawkeye's swordsmanship. He's a pretty good new guy. Is Miss Alsunday okay? His subordinates looked up and responded. The vice president. She's fine. She's on her way back safely. Hearing that Miss Alsunday, who was important to his plan, was fine, Crocodile blew out a smoke ring and nodded slightly. Gotcha. After signaling his subordinates to leave, Crocodile stared at the portraits of Luffy and Beanos on the table, and fixed them on the golden hook. I'm so hungry. Finally, is here. Touching Luffy's collapsed belly, he looked up and saw the island, and was excited for a while. At this moment, the Mary finally arrived at the next stop, Little Garden. As Usopp docked the boat on the shore, he looked up at the dense forest full of life in front of him and relaxed. If it weren't for Beanos's help, they would need 2 more days to get here. Nami looked at the dense forest and looked down at the record pointer in her hand seriously. At present, they passed 2 islands along the way. They had to stay for a short time on each island to make the magnetic force of the record pointer full. According to this analysis, it would take more than 2 months for them to reach Alabasta. Straw Hat crew did not delay, resting on the island and trying to collect the food needed on the ship. However, during this period, Nami also had a high fever like in the original work. In order not to delay the course, Beanos took Nami alone to Junsho Island to find the next partner ship doctor. Bah! The screen went to Naval Headquarters. Marshal's office. Click. Sengoku hung up the connection with Admiral Aokiji and glanced at Beanos' bounty list in his hand. According to the Straw Hat crew's entry into the Grand Line and the sailing route, it will take more than 2 months for the Straw Hat crew to meet. Sengoku showed a trace of anxiety on his face, and he always felt uneasy in his heart. In his opinion, the Straw Hat crew was extremely terrible in terms of potential, talent, and understanding. He must wipe it out in the cradle before the Straw Hat crew has fully grown up. Garp, who was always worried about the safety of Luffy and Beanos on the sofa, heard that it would take more than 2 months for Aokiji to meet Luffy and others. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said secretly, Aokiji, don't be ungrateful. Otherwise, I will let you taste my iron fist again. Quote. Humph. At this time, a man wearing a scarlet suit, a rose flower on his left chest, a white duckbill hat on his head, and a cigar in his mouth. It was Sakazuki Akainu, one of the 3 admirals of Naval Headquarters who had just returned from New World. He crossed his arms and snorted coldly, muttering, that guy's son. This evil bloodline must not be allowed to live. The same kid who awakened Conqueror's Haki must be eliminated. Akainu, who implements absolute justice in everything, will never allow such unstable factors to exist. Ignoring Aokiji who had already gone to pursue him, he looked up at Sengoku who was sitting on the desk and asked seriously, Marshal, let Kuzan come back, and let me take care of the operation of capturing Straw Hat crew. Quote. He wants to kill the Straw Hat crew before they grow up completely. Garp, who was already worried, suddenly became gloomy when he heard Akainu's sudden request. Let Aokiji go to capture Luffy, Beanos and the others. Maybe Kuzan will spare their lives for my sake. If Akainu takes action, Luffy, Beanos and the others will not have any chance. Although Beanos has been able to fight Hawkeye for a whole day and a night without losing, he is definitely not his opponent when facing Akainu. What worries Garp even more is that Akainu's personality is completely opposite to Aokiji. He acts vigorously and ruthlessly, even to his marines. He is extremely cold-blooded and will do anything to achieve his goals. If Sengoku really agrees to transfer back to Kuzan and let Sakazuki go to hunt Luffy, Beanos and the others, they will be in danger. Thinking of this, Garp looked at Sengoku with a worried look, fearing that the old guy would agree. Akainu still had a serious expression, waiting for Sengoku's answer. The Straw Hat crew, who had just set out to sea, was now more popular than all the new stars of the new generation. Not only because Monkey D. Luffy was the son of that man, but also because of Beanos who awakened Conqueror's Haki. This kid with such great potential, if not captured in time, may affect the future pattern of the sea. Sengoku, known as the resourceful general, naturally realized the terrible potential of the Straw Hat crew, and he also wanted to arrest them. But now Aokiji has gone to the Grand Line to pursue the Straw Hat crew, and he must not be transferred back at will. And Akainu has more important things to do, that is, to monitor those guys in the New World. After some careful consideration, Sengoku shook his head slightly and spoke. No need, those guys in the New World have begun to stir recently, your main task is here. Although the Straw Hat crew has great potential, they are just newcomers after all. Of course, the headquarters can't let two admirals chase a group of newcomers who just went out to sea at the same time. Marshal. Akainu frowned and wanted to continue to remind him, but was interrupted by Sengoku. Okay. Compared with a group of new pirates, the New World is the direction that the naval headquarters should pay more attention to. Sengoku didn't intend to argue with Akainu. As a marine marshal, his ideas must be treated conservatively. Moreover, there are many people on the sea who are more dangerous than the Straw Hat crew, and there are countless of them in the New World. At present, he proposed to the world government, and it has just been effective. He will not let the Sea Seeker branch stationed in the New World fall into emptiness because of a Straw Hat crew. If the big pirates or four emperors in the New World take advantage of the fact that the naval headquarters has no high-end combat power to guard an attack, then all his layout will be in vain. I know. After a long silence, Akainu nodded slightly, but he was unwilling in his heart. Garp looked at Akainu's back as he left, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. He turned his head and looked at Sengoku with a hint of gratitude. Sengoku naturally saw Garp's little thoughts, but ignored them and continued to deal with the pile of documents. Time flew by, and Luffy and others ended their adventure on Zigu Island and continued to sail. On the other side, Benos and Nami, who had recovered from a high fever, also returned to the Mary. However, Benos and Nami returned and brought back a reindeer to the Mary. Quote. Usopp looked at the reindeer hiding behind Benos, showing curiosity and asking. Benos, Nami-chan, where did this pet come from? It looks so cute. What? Sanji stared at the little reindeer with a recipe-like look, as if he had already imagined how to make a perfect dish in his mind. It's obviously a perfect ingredient. Hearing the conversation between the 224 people, Chopper was dissatisfied on the surface, holding Benos's thigh tightly with his little hoof, and retorted loudly. I'm not a pet, nor an ingredient. What? Usopp and Sanji were stunned, pointing at Chopper and shouting. The little pet ingredient can actually speak. Hearing Chopper speak, Luffy and Zoro ran to Joe, and Luffy squatted down, looking at Chopper with a curious baby look. Oh, really? Food can actually speak. Seeing Luffy and others with a curious baby look, Benos and Nami told the story. Of course, Benos also spent a lot of effort to invite Chopper to the ship, mainly because Chopper's personality was too timid and particularly resistant to strangers. Hearing the story, Usopp, Sanji, Zoro and others suddenly realized that although they had regrets about losing delicious ingredients, they were still very willing to accept their furry companions. Luffy grinned and extended his hand to Chopper, who was hiding behind Benos' thigh. Welcome to our Straw Hat crew, we are partners now. Chopper was a little socially anxious. After looking up at Benos, he carefully extended his hoof and shook hands with Luffy. Ah. You, hello. My name is Chopper and I am a doctor. Please give me your advice. Nami, the return of Benos, and the joining of Chopper, Luffy and others were very happy and decided to start a welcome party. For a while, the deck of the Mary was very lively. Chopper looked at the harmonious and lively scene from a distance, with full of envy on his face. Little Chopper, what are you doing there? Come here quickly. Benos smiled at Chopper and waved to him. Chopper was stunned and looked at Benos, Luffy and everyone smiles to him, which made him feel warm in his heart. After thinking for a moment, he took a deep breath and rushed towards the Straw Hat crew with joy. Here we go, everyone. Hey, Chopper, do you want a sip? A man should know how to drink. Chopper, this piece of barbecue is for you. Chopper was a little uncomfortable with his friend's enthusiasm, but he still took the wine from Zoro and took a sip. Ahem, hee. Chopper needs to savor this wine slowly. Hey, Zoro, don't teach Chopper bad things. That's right, Impa eats meat. Instantly, the burning sensation in his throat caused by the wine made Chopper cough, but he saw that Luffy and the others did not blame him, but continued to stuff him with food. Let him establish a preliminary bond with the Straw Hat crew. Are you okay, Chopper? Benos beside him looked at Chopper with tears in his eyes and smiled. Don't be restrained, they are like this. Nami also walked to Chopper and sat down, saying comfortingly, yes, you are already our partner. Let go of your original restraints and sail freely with us in the endless sea. Chopper held the half-drunk wine in his hooves, looked up at Luffy and Usopp who were constantly playing, and the quarrel between Zoro and Sanji, and murmured, is this what a partner looks like? On the other side, Vivi, who had just come out of the cold sea, hugged the drowned Pao de Coué tightly with both hands, ran over, and used the campfire to keep warm. Nami looked at the shivering Pao de Coué and asked, Vivi, it's so cold, how did Pao de Coué fall into the cold sea? I don't know, if it wasn't discovered early, Pao de Coué would have died. Vivi anxiously walked towards Pao de Coué, wiping the cold water stains on her body, and her face was full of confusion. Gaga. At this time, Pao de Coué twisted his head and looked at Zoro, and it was unknown what he was saying. It said that there was a guy named Zoro swimming in the cold sea just now, and then he disappeared while swimming. That's why it rushed down to rescue him regardless of everything. Chopper frowned as he listened to Pao de Coué's complaining story, and told the Straw Hat crew. Vivi and Nami couldn't help but twitch their lips when they heard this, and looked at Zoro. Ahem. When Zoro heard Chopper's story, he spit out the half-drunk wine subconsciously, with an embarrassed face. Indeed, he seemed to have heard the sound of falling into the water when he was practicing in the cold sea, but he didn't know what happened when he entered the practice state. After finishing the practice, he returned to the ship. Chopper, can you understand what Pao de Coué said? Ah, yes, I was originally an animal, so I can understand what they say. Luffy and Usopp ran over, and saw that Chopper could understand Pao de Coué's words, and their eyes were shining with gold. Oh, amazing, Chopper, not only Grandmaster medical skills, but also love animals. Facing Luffy, Usopp praised him. Chopper was stunned for a moment, then reacted shyly and said proudly, ah, I won't be proud of you praising me like this. Sanji also squatted down, looked at the proud Chopper carefully, and said with a pity. What a pity, deer antlers are a great tonic. Bang bang bang. As soon as the voice fell, the figure of the great devil Nami rose up behind Sanji, Luffy, and Usopp, and hit each of them on the head with a hammer, roaring. Don't try to hit Chopper. Chopper is our partner. Luffy and Usopp covered their heads with big lumps and retorted innocently. Why hit me, Nami? We didn't say anything. Nami didn't bother to pay attention to the two. In her opinion, although Luffy and Usopp didn't speak, their eyes had betrayed them. As the farce ended, Chopper was taken aside by Benos and decided to launch a full-level comprehension future deduction on Chopper. Although the changes in the original plot have greatly improved the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates, it also means that they have been targeted by the naval headquarters and the 7 warlords of the sea. The current situation of the Straw Hat Pirates is very dangerous. Chopper has just joined and has no experience in self-protection. After Benos's explanation, Chopper, who had been lowering his head, also made a decision. He didn't want to be a burden to his partner, so he agreed to Benos's full-level understanding future deduction. As the light around Chopper disappeared, Chopper seemed to have not changed much from before, but his aura had changed. Chopper only felt that a lot of knowledge and methods to quickly improve his strength were constantly emerging in his head. Luffy and others gathered around and helped discuss further improvement of strength and development of fruit abilities. Time flew by, and the Merry sailed on the endless sea for 7 days. Luffy, Benos, Zoro, and Usopp sat on the guardrail with a listless look, picking up fishing rods to pass the time. Hey, when will we reach the land? So boring. Gurgle. Hey, Luffy, it's not long since we finished lunch, why is your stomach protesting again? Luffy hunched his back and looked weak, sighing and complaining. Sanji said he wanted to save food, so he only had 3 pieces of barbecue for lunch. I'm so hungry. Listening to Luffy's complaints, Usopp was furious and yelled at Luffy. You still have the nerve to say that, there are 4 pieces of barbecue for lunch, and you ate 3 by yourself. And he didn't even let go of the bait that he stole from the kitchen. Quote. What's wrong? Waiting for the idiot fish to be delivered to your mouth. Faced with Usopp's constant spitting and roaring, Luffy seemed to be deflated inside. What should I do? I'm so hungry. Zoro also looked helpless and asked Sanji, who had just walked out of the kitchen. Hey, perverted cook, do you have spare food as bait? Sanji put the 2 glasses of iced juice in his hand on the table next to Nami and Vivi and responded disdainfully. Originally, there was, but it was stolen by a skinny monkey in the morning. Quote, hurry up and fish up the food, otherwise we will all have to eat the northwest wind. Just when everyone was at a loss, Luffy and Zoro saw Pao de Kuai running back and forth on the deck, and their eyes lit up for a moment. Got it. Pao de Kuai felt the coldness coming from behind him, turned around suddenly, met Luffy and Zoro's creepy eyes, and retreated suddenly. I thought, why are these 2 stupid humans looking at me like this? Are they planning to take advantage of me again? Hey, duck, help me. Pao de Kuai heard this and thought to himself, sure enough. These stupid humans are finally going to attack me, duck brother. No, I have to leave this ship. Even if it means losing to the monsters in the sea, I don't want to be roasted by them. While his claws were trembling, he kept retreating towards the guardrail, and before Luffy and Zoro could catch him, he quickly flapped his wings and jumped into the sea. Quack. Chopper listened to Pao de Kuai's cry and quickly translated. Duck master, even if it means losing to the sea kings in the sea, I won't let you humans get what you want. Straw Hat Crew. Vivi was also shocked when she saw this scene and wanted to call Pao de Kuai back. Vivi, lend me your duck. However, even if Pao de Kuai escaped to the sea, he could not escape Luffy's pursuit. He stretched out his right arm and kept spinning. The next moment, his rubber right hand suddenly stretched out and rushed towards the fleeing Pao de Kuai. Pao de Kuai saw this and flapped his wings to escape quickly. Luffy's big hand grabbed his neck tightly and he could not get away no matter how hard he struggled. Quack. Pao de Kuai, who was caught by Luffy, was still struggling and shouting. Let me go, you human. Chopper, a master of translation, was not to be outdone. Interpretation. Vivi couldn't bear to see the miserable state of Pao Kuai, and asked Luffy and Zoro. Luffy, can you let Pao Kuai go? It's my partner. Benos ignored Vivi's words, and while Pao Kuai was tightly held in Luffy's hand, he quickly hung the fishhook on Pao Kuai and kicked Pao Kuai's butt hard. Swoosh. Vivi, who was originally worried, seemed to understand Luffy and Benos' intentions when she saw this scene. Usopp picked up the fishing rod and quickly let the line out to the longest, grinning. Compared to dead things, living things attract more big fish in the sea. In less than 3 minutes, there will definitely be big bait. Pao Kuai, who was kicked back into the sea, protested strongly and even cursed. Quack. Good job, Luffy. Zoro listened to Pao de Kuai's constant shouting, full of confusion, and asked Chopper. Huh, Chopper, what is the duck saying? Chopper was embarrassed, and finally imitated Pao de Kuai's words and translated. I'm not a human, but you stupid humans are worse than ducks. After venting his dissatisfaction, Pao de Kuai had already compromised at this moment. Instead of roasting it, it was better to attract the monster in the sea quickly and complete the task as soon as possible to save the duck's life. After Pao de Kuai tried hard to stir the sea surface, a huge black shadow suddenly appeared in the sea. Off. As the sea water churned violently, a huge sea king with a bull-like head opened its bloody mouth and bit Pao de Kuai. Wow, what a big one. Rubber. Seeing that he was about to be killed if he ran too fast, Luffy grinned excitedly, and his figure flew into the air like a cannonball, and blasted towards the head of the huge sea kings. Pistol. Bang. With the added terrible force, the sea kings, which were originally full of energy, gushed a lot of blood in an instant, their eyes rolled back, and they fell heavily into the sea. Boom boom. Zoro. Luffy, who was suspended in the air, shouted loudly to Zoro on the guardrail. I know. Jung. Zoro, who understood Luffy's intention, grinned, pulled out the 3rd-generation Witsu from his waist, and swung several slashes at the sea kings. The fierce slash instantly split the huge sea kings into dozens of pieces, and the Straw Hat Pirates, who were originally out of food, successfully solved the food problem. Run fast. What about me? I haven't boarded the boat yet. Nami, who was half lying on a beach chair, enjoying the sunlight reflected from the blue sky, smelled a pungent smell and looked up at the sea. What is that? On the sea in front of her, a large amount of green steam continued to rise. As a senior navigator, Nami, seeing this scene combined with the pungent smell in the air, his face gradually became solemn. Water vapor. The seabed under your feet is a group of violent volcanoes. Nami looked down at the recording pointer in his hand to locate the direction and analyze the situation in front of him. He hurriedly woke up Luffy, Benos and others who were sleeping soundly on the deck. Usopp, adjust the rudder by 8 degrees. Slow down the speed of the Mary and slowly pass through the steam area. On the other side, a pirate ship that also mistakenly entered the steam area was also anxious. The leader stood at the bow, with a strong figure, strange heavy makeup, false eyelashes, and flat bangs. Wearing a swan ballet costume and a pink coat, it was Baroque Studio Senior Agent Mr. 2 Bentham. Mr. 2, we are now mistakenly entering the fog area, should we turn around and exit? Ah, don't pay attention, go through it at full speed. Quote. The pirates hesitated and said worriedly, Sir, will this happen? See ya, do as I say. Yes. Just as the pirate ship was trying to pass through the fog generated by steam at full speed, a scream was heard from the bow. The pirates looked up and saw that Bentham, who was originally standing at the bow, had completely disappeared. It's over. Mr. 2 must have been attacked just now. Quick, find Mr. 2 with all your strength. Back to the other side, under the command of Nami's experienced navigation technology, the Mary easily passed through the steam-emitting area. Ring. At this time, the originally forgotten fishing rod shook violently. Luffy, Usopp, and Benos remembered that the bait, Runafast, was still in the steam area behind them. Thinking of this, Usopp quickly grabbed the fishing rod and tried to reel it in, but a huge force came from the other end of the bait. As the prey hooked, without caring so much, as Usopp increased his strength, and 2 figures suddenly flew out of the sea in an instant. Luffy, Benos and others looked closely and saw a strangely dressed person on the back of Pautakuai. It was Mr. 2 Bentham who fell into the sea. Ahem. Mr. 2 choked out 2 mouthfuls of sea water, opened his eyes and looked around, muttering to himself. Why am I lying on a duck? I remember there was a strong impact before, and then I fell into the sea. So I was rescued. Zoro looked at the strangely dressed duck with a pair of wings on his back and said subconsciously. Did you rescue a fellow duck? It looks like it's a female. Usopp's mouth twitched suddenly, pointing at Mr. 2 on Pautakuai's back and roaring. Zoro, which eye of yours can tell that they are the same kind? This is obviously a person. No, a she-male. Seeing the person brought back by Rune, Luffy showed a disappointed expression. Ah. It's not food, why don't you throw him back into the sea? Luffy, Zoro agreed, and raised his foot to kick Mr. 2 back into the sea. Wait, I can still rescue him. And he can't swim. Bentham came back to his senses, and stopped anxiously, then bowed to Luffy and others to thank them. What a close call. I thought he was going to die. Thank you for your help. I will never forget your kindness. Bentham patted his thin chest. Due to Bentham's funny and peculiar personality, he soon became familiar with Luffy, Usopp, Chopper and others. Bentham's face-changing performance completely conquered Luffy and other audiences. A few hours later, a pirate ship quickly approached the stern of the Mary. When they learned that it was Bentham's ship, Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp showed a complicated expression. Although they only knew Bentham briefly, they established friendships with each other. As Bentham returned to his ship, he looked at Luffy and others with regret in his eyes and waved goodbye. Although we met briefly, our friendship was established at this moment. I hope we can meet one day in the future. Looking at the Mary going away, Bentham couldn't help but shed tears and ordered his men to chase Straw Hat. Crew, Luffy, Chopper and Usopp were still in mixed emotions as they watched the pirate ship gradually disappear on the sea. Vivi, didn't you recognize who that guy was just now? Benos looked at Vivi, who was running fast, and spoke lightly. Isn't that guy called Bentham? What's the problem? Vivi was stunned, looked up at the pirate ship that disappeared in the sea, and shook her head. Baroque Studio Senior Agent Mr. 2. What? Benos said Bentham's true identity lightly. If he guessed correctly, the reason why Bentham appeared here was nothing more than being ordered by Crocodile to come and hunt down their Straw Hat pirates. What? That guy is Mr. 2. Vivi was shocked to hear that the she-male was the senior agent Mr. 2, and she also analyzed why Mr. 2 came here. So, Bentham was originally coming for us. I didn't expect to meet him here. Usopp looked serious, recalling the fruit ability that he had just displayed, which was to change his face instantly. That guy's fruit ability is really tricky. I think the reason why your hometown is in turmoil is related to Bentham. After all, he can transform into anyone's appearance. Vivi recalled that when she left Alabasta, the people showed disgust to her, as if they understood everything. She gritted her teeth and muttered to herself, "No, I have to hurry back to Alabasta and dismantle Crocodile's conspiracy." On the other side, Bentham walked out of the haze of farewell, tiptoed and danced ballet with joy, because he was looking forward to meeting next time Mr. 2. At this time, Bentham's deputy came to Bentham with the bounty list of Straw Hat crew in his hand, hesitant to speak. Bentham stopped singing and dancing ballet and responded seriously. "What's the matter?" The deputy did not speak, but carefully handed the bounty list in his hand to Bentham. Bentham took the bounty list and looked down at it. The next moment, his smiling face gradually became solemn, and even his eyes flashed a hint of coldness. Feeling the cold expression flashing in Bentham's eyes, the deputy asked carefully, "Mr. 2, should we change the voyage together? Catch up with the Straw Hat Pirates?" After a long silence, Bentham looked up at the direction where the Straw Hat Pirates left, tore the bounty list of Straw Hat crew in his hand into pieces and threw it into the sea. He said in a deep voice with his deputy on his back, "No need, chase the Straw Hat crew in the direction of navigation." After a short episode, the Straw Hat Pirates continued to sail towards Alabasta. Alabasta headquarters. Shichibukai Crocodile listened to the information from his subordinates, his veins suddenly popped up, and he stretched out his hand and slammed it heavily on the table. Bang! The whole table instantly turned into a pile of yellow sand. "What did you say?" Except for Mr. 2, the other cadres who went to chase and kill were either killed by the Straw Hat crew or arrested by the Marine. Looking at the table turned into yellow sand, the surviving younger brother trembled all over, mustered up the courage to bite the bullet, and responded carefully. Yes, boss." Crocodile's face was gloomy. These were the agents he carefully trained, but they were all killed by the Straw Hat Pirates one by one. How could he be angry? He raised his eyes and stared at the subordinates in front of him, full of murderous intent. "You go to hell too." "Ah." He raised the golden hook and instantly pierced through his subordinate's chest, blood gushed out and he fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Crocodile showed disdain on his face, snorted coldly, reached out to pick up the towel, and wiped the blood left on the golden hook. HMPH. Since they are all dead, why did you come back? On the dim sofa on the left, Robin looked at everything in front of him with indifference, mouth. "Should I notify Mr. 2 to come back?" Crocodile shook his head slightly. Although he didn't know why Mr. 2 didn't follow his orders to attack the Straw Hat crew, Mr. 2's actions had already proved that he had betrayed him. As his subordinates fell into the hands of the Straw Hat crew one after another, the plan in his heart had to be implemented in advance. "No need. Mr. 2 will not come back. Let Mr. 1 return to the base camp. I will implement that plan in advance." Hearing that the plan was to be implemented in advance, Robin was stunned and said with surprise, "Ahead of time. We have just taken control of Alabasta. Once the plan is implemented ahead of time, will it allow the rebels and the National Army to unite?" Crocodile didn't care about the rebels and the National Army at all. In his eyes, those guys were just a group of ants. What he cared about more at the moment was the Straw Hat crew. After all, according to the intelligence, the strength of those little devils in the Straw Hat crew has exceeded his expectations. He must take advantage of the Straw Hat crew to arrive in Alabasta to solve all the problems here and even implement the plan. No need, they are just ant-like guys. After getting that thing, I will bury them in Alabasta completely. Crocodile showed a gloomy smile. As long as he got that thing, no matter whether it was the rebels, the National Army, the Straw Hat Pirates, or even the entire Marine and world government, they would not be able to fight against him. Old Man Whitebeard, I will return the shame I suffered back then. I know, I will notify the Baroque studio agents and the members will return to the base camp. Robin looked at Crocodile, who was occupied by ambition, with an imperceptible smile on her lips, and stood up and left the dim office. Standing in the dim corridor, Robin recalled the agreement with the man and smiled. Compared with Crocodile, who was occupied by ambition and used each other, she believed in Straw Hat Crew in her heart. Whispered, "Don't let me down." On the other side, the Sleeping Beauty ship was about to arrive at Alabasta, the hometown of Vivi. On the deck, the Straw Hat Crew looked at the desert covered with yellow sand, and they were all surprised, and couldn't wait to embark on a new adventure. Wait, Beanos reached out to stop Luffy, who was about to jump to the shore, and suggested that everyone tie a mark. After all, Bentham's fruit ability can transform into anyone's appearance. After doing this, the Straw Hat Crew officially landed. However, after sailing on the sea for so long, Luffy was like a wild horse that had run away from its reins, and disappeared completely in front of everyone. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper were so scared that they quickly followed the direction of the smoke and dust. Beanos put his hand on his face, showing a helpless expression on his face. Fortunately, Observation Haki could sense Luffy, otherwise he would really have to catch up in a hurry. As for Vivi, Beanos asked Zoro and Sanji to protect her. After all, with their current strength, they can easily crush the agents of Baroque Studio, and even if the Marine Elite Vice Admiral attacks, they can't shake it. Vivi looked at the familiar desert, her eyes moistened, and she murmured, "I wonder how my father and everyone are doing now. And, can I really save Alabasta?" Although she was inevitably excited about missing her hometown when she returned to it, her inner uneasiness also enveloped her heart at this moment. Facing Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, she didn't know whether Luffy, Beanos and others could really stop it, but now she had no choice but to believe them. Looking at Vivi with a tangled face, Beanos reached out and patted her shoulder, and said before leaving, "Okay, let's go. Don't let Zoro get lost under your nose." As soon as these words came out, Zoro beside him couldn't stand it, and retorted with dissatisfaction on his face. "Hey, Beanos, who do you not like from onwards?" Small town. However, Beanos' arrangement had been completely forgotten by Sanji, who had just arrived in the town. Due to the heat in Alabasta, although the women on the street were covered with scarves, they were dressed hot. Along the way, Sanji, as a knight, wiped away countless nosebleeds. Even Zoro and Vivi couldn't stand it. She said with disgust, "Hey, perverted chef, is this going to end?" "Tisk, you know nothing, green algae head." Vivi asked Zoro in a worried voice. "Is it really okay? How much blood has he shed? When he arrives at the Baroque Studio base camp, can he still fight?" Zoro waved his hand, not worrying about Sanji, the pervert, but even complaining that Sanji didn't bleed enough. "It's okay. It's better for this pervert to die." Vivi's mouth twitched, looking at Sanji's still perverted face, sighed and ignored it casually, and followed Zoro's footsteps. A restaurant in a small town. A man wearing an orange cowboy hat, a Madara on his face, a naked upper body, and a skull with a pirate flag tattooed on his back attracted the attention of everyone in the restaurant. "Hey, how many days has that guy not eaten? How should I know? If he continues to eat at this rate, the restaurant will have to go bankrupt, right? I hope the boss can still hold on later." Looking at the plates on the table piled up more than 2 meters high, everyone couldn't help swallowing their saliva and said in surprise, "Tap tap." At this time, the door of the restaurant was pushed open, and a smoker wearing a Marine Colonel uniform and holding 3 cigars in his mouth walked in. Seeing that everyone in the store was looking at the man who was eating with his head down, subconsciously, he looked at him and his face suddenly became extremely solemn, and he couldn't help but prepare to take action. "A guy like you actually appeared here. Captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Portgas D. Ace." After these words fell, everyone who was still watching Ace's joke turned pale in an instant. "What? That's right. This guy has a skull on his back, he's the Whitebeard Pirates. Then doesn't that mean he's really a member of the Whitebeard Pirates?" The world-famous Whitebeard Pirates, everyone knows that they are one of the 4 overlords of the New World, Shipball, and Uhuzi is known as the strongest man in the world. "What member?" "His name is Portgas D. Ace. The captain of the 2nd Division under the Whitebeard Pirates. The bounty is as high as 550 million Baileys, Fire Fist Ace." How could such a monster appear here? Smoker, who was also puzzled. A guy like this should be in the New World, how could he come to the first half of the Grand Line? What is your purpose for appearing here? Fire Fist Ace. Hearing that his identity was exposed, Ace swallowed the food in his mouth and raised his eyes and said bluntly, I came here to find someone. Wait until I find it. Before Ace finished speaking, a shout was heard from outside the restaurant's door. Benoist, we finally found a place to eat. Didn't Luffy say that? Don't call my name casually, so as not to be exposed. Quote. Listening to the two voices on the street outside the door, Ace and Smoker were startled, and suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. Smoker, interrupted by the loud voice, refocused all his attention on Ace. His primary goal at the moment was to arrest the captain of the second team of the Whitebeard Pirates, Fire Fist Ace. He crossed his hands and stretched the Seastone 10 hands on his back, ready to arrest Ace before he could react. Go to jail obediently. However, before the voice fell, a signature voice resounded throughout the restaurant. Rubber rubber bazooka. At the same time, the door of the restaurant was suddenly knocked away, and a black shadow flew into the restaurant at a very fast speed like a cannonball. Swoosh! It instantly hit Smoker's back, and Ace, who was sitting at the table eating, was also affected. The two of them crashed through the restaurant wall and smashed into the ruins. Boom! Faced with the sudden loud noise and the big hole smashed out, everyone in the restaurant widened their eyes and stood there. However, Luffy didn't care about that. He jumped onto the bar and shouted to the stunned restaurant owner. Boss, I want meat. Give it to me quickly. The boss, who came to his senses, didn't dare to hesitate, and rushed to the kitchen to bring all the food to Luffy. Luffy was not polite. He buried his head in the food in front of him, not caring about what had just happened. The owner of restaurant looked at Luffy, who was eating voraciously, and always felt that this scene was familiar, as if it was comparable to the Fire Fist Ace who was knocked out just now. But should we remind this guest to pay the bill first? After all, he just knocked Fire Fist Ace and Colonel Marine out. This guest, the food set you ordered is a total of 30,000 Baileys, can you pay the bill first? After all, you just knocked two big guys out. Quote. Hearing the restaurant owner's words, Luffy looked up with food in his mouth and said vaguely, Really, how come I didn't know that I hit someone? Plop. Ace Smoker, who was thrown dozens of meters into the ruins, climbed up with a face full of pain. The gloom on his face was gradually covered by anger, and Ace roared first. Who the hell is that? Hey! As he looked towards the restaurant at the end of the cave, a familiar figure came into view. At the same time, Smoker also saw a familiar figure walking through the restaurant at the end, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Ace didn't care so much. He had to find the guy who just knocked him away. Just as Ace returned to the restaurant with a lot of anger, he looked at the two familiar figures and suddenly became excited and shouted, Luffy, Benos, it's really you two guys. At the same time, Smoker's figure behind him was shocked, and the face that made him lose his dignity was like a nightmare that he couldn't forget until now. Gnashed his teeth and growled, Benos. On the other side, Luffy saw that it was Ace, and quickly put down the food in his hand and pounced on Ace like a monkey. Ace. Compared to Luffy, Benos is much more stable. Seeing the changes in Ace, he also smiled. After all, this is the brotherhood of 10 years. Long time no see. Ace. Ace staggered when Luffy rushed over, and then looked at Luffy and Benos and laughed. Ha 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 ha, we haven't seen each other for 3 years, Luffy, Benos. Yes, if Benos and I were not adults 2 years ago, we would definitely go to sea together. If it weren't for Benos, I'm really afraid you would do something stupid. Smoker looked at Luffy, Ace, and Benos reminiscing happily, and the anger that was about to erupt calmed him down instantly. He never thought that the Straw Hat Boy, the second in command Benos, was actually a brother of Fire Fist Ace. Thinking, this is trouble. Ace, with just one Fire Fist, has already made him give his all. Now with the addition of the Straw Hat Boy and Benos, there is absolutely no chance of winning by himself. Just when Smoker was in a dilemma, Luffy and Ace pulled away, their eyes became serious. Ace raised his fist wrapped in flames, grinned, and said, Hoo-hoo, Luffy, let me see if your strength is still the worst among us in the past 2 years. HMPH. Duh. Luffy was naturally unwilling to be outdone. His fists were gradually covered with dark-armed color. He snorted coldly and sank slightly, ready to attack at any time, and responded. Don't look down on me, Ace. I am not the weakling you beat me up. Seeing Luffy's fists covered in black armament hockey, Ace was shocked and thought, that's armament hockey. Hockey. Luffy has awakened armament hockey. It seems that Benos has been training Luffy more and more strictly in the 2 years since he went to sea. Ace subconsciously looked at Benos, who looked like a lazy fish next to him, and then paid more attention to Luffy, who activated armament hockey in front of him. Satisfied. Really? Then wait and see. This scene surprised everyone in the restaurant. Some diners who had previously questioned Ace's identity as the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates' 2nd Division no longer had any doubts in their hearts. Fire! Fire! His fists were covered in hot flames. That's right. This is the ability of the Logia Mera Mera fruit that can ignore all physical attacks. Everyone looked at the rising temperature of the flames and couldn't help swallowing. Many people couldn't help but take a few steps back, and even some diners who realized the danger of death turned around and ran out of the restaurant, fearing that they would be affected. No, the distance is too close. Fire Fist Ace is a pirate with a bounty of 550 million Baileys. Once the battle breaks out, we will definitely be engulfed by the blazing flames. Benos, who was beside him, looked at Luffy and Ace, who were about to fight here, and showed helplessness on his face. He stood between the two and stopped them. Hey, can't you two guys be quiet? Can't we just meet and find a place to reminisce in peace? If we fight here, this restaurant and the street will be destroyed by you, and I won't have the money to pay for it. DB. Luffy and Ace were stunned for a moment, looked around the restaurant and the busy streets outside, and quickly retracted the flames and armed colors wrapped in their fists, scratching their heads and responding awkwardly. I almost forgot. Luffy, this is definitely not the place to fight. Luffy recalled Benos' instructions and grinned. Oh, that's right. Benos and I can't reveal our identities at will now. Smoker, do you think I don't exist? All those who wanted to run away saw Benos stopping Ace and Luffy from fighting. They patted their chests with their hands, breathed a long sigh of relief, and thought to themselves, I finally survived. At this time, many people noticed North's appearance and the sword hanging on his waist. Their relaxed expressions suddenly became shocked and talked about it. This guy's appearance is not wrong. The new monster who shocked the sea recently. The second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates, Benos. The bounty is as high as 400 million Baileys. What? It's him. At the same time, Luffy, who was just about to fight Ace, was also recognized at this time. So, the skinny monkey wearing a straw hat next to him is the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Straw Hat Luffy. Ace carefully felt the terrifying aura looming on Benos, and fear and dread rose in his eyes. He thought that in the 2 years of sailing, his strength should have surpassed Benos and become the strongest among the 4 brothers. But now it seems that Benos' strength is more terrifying than 2 years ago, and he actually feels the same feeling as Whitebeard Daddy in Benos. Of course, Ace is not jealous of Benos' strength, but happy for him. However, the old man was very angry. After all, the old man had high hopes for Benos and tried his best to bring him back to the naval headquarters to become an excellent marine. Hehe, I didn't expect that Benos, you would choose to become a pirate. Ah, there's no way. Who let me fall into Luffy's trap? As he said that, Benos glanced at Luffy, who was grinning smugly beside him. Ha 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 ha, I would have forgotten if you hadn't said it. Ace was stunned and quickly reacted, laughing. He knew that Benos was tricked by Luffy. If Luffy hadn't tricked Benos when he was drunk, Benos would have agreed to join the marine. But at the same time, Ace envied Luffy in his heart. If he had tricked Benos, Benos would be his most reliable deputy now. Maybe he couldn't tell. Ace shook his head, interrupting the impulse to continue thinking, laughed dryly twice, and said proudly. Ha ha ha, I haven't seen you two for 2 years. You two have become stronger and stronger. With your strength now, I think there is no one who can stop you in the first half of the Grand Line. Of course, except Marine. Smoker, who has been a background board, looked at Ace, Luffy, and Benos happily reminiscing and talking, and hesitated in his heart. If he went up and fought with him directly, he would have no chance of winning alone. After all, he had seen how terrible Benos was. He was just like a monster. And there was also the captain of the second team of the Whitebeard Pirates, Ace, the captain of the Fire Fist, and the Straw Hat Boy who had awakened armament hockey at some point. Needless to say, this was simply a death sentence. But as a Marine, he was responsible for defending justice, so he shrank back. After a long silence, Smoker's eyes flashed with determination, and he crossed his hands and stretched them to his back to take off Seastone's 10 hands. White smoke slowly rising from his body, decided to go all out. Have you talked enough? Then, now please go to prison and spend the rest of your life parallel. Ace glanced at Smoker, who activated the fruit ability, and then he remembered that there was a Marine colonel in front of him. He said awkwardly, "Ah, I almost forgot that you are still here." Quote. Luffy also noticed Smoker and showed a look of surprise. "Oh, you are the old Smoker in Logue Town." Smoker gnashed his teeth at Luffy and Ace, who looked like they were asking for a beating. He was humiliated. Straw Hat Boy, punch Ace. Holding 10 hands of Seastone, he used the power of Logia smoke fruit to enter elementalization and rushed towards Ace and Luffy. Straw Hat Luffy and Fire Fist Ace both have demon fruit power. As long as the 10 hands of Seastone in his hand touch the two people, he can instantly solve the two difficult guys. Swoosh. Facing Smoker's sudden attack, Ace and Luffy frowned slightly and raised their fists, intending to beat away the annoying Marine who disturbed their reunion. Well, Smoker, it seems that the lesson we learned in Logue Town was not enough. Quote. Beanos stretched out his hand and yawned, then took 2 steps forward to block Ace and Luffy, teasing. Smoker looked at Beanos, who was blocking Luffy and Ace, and immediately gritted his teeth. His inner plan had been shattered. But he had already decided to take action, so how could he retreat halfway? And the man in front of him was the one who made him suffer endless humiliation. Relying on the smoke as a propulsion, holding the Seastone hand, he launched his full strength. I will break all your bones. Beanos. Beanos's original lazy appearance suddenly changed, his eyes became sharp, and he said coldly. Looking for death. Beanos didn't even intend to use the big knife lay you on his waist. He raised his fist, and with a pop, the dark-armed color instantly covered him, and he smashed the Seastone 10 hands head-on. Dang! The crisp metal collision sounded, accompanied by strong scattered airflow and smoke, and the tables, chairs, and drinks around the entire restaurant were instantly blown away. Armed color again. Hockey. Smoker stared at the black fist that blocked his attack, and his anger intensified. When he was about to control the power of smoke fruit to completely restrain Beanos, the nightmare-like voice came into his ears again. With this little strength, you are not even qualified to fight. Smoker was stunned, and then his eyes widened suddenly, watching the hardened right foot of the black weapon kicking his chest. Bang! Puff! The powerful force instantly made Smoker spit blood, and his whole body was like a kite with a broken string, breaking through the wall of the restaurant and flying backwards towards the street outside. Boom! The figure was smashed into the ruins of the shops on the street. Wow! The diners who escaped from the restaurant were shocked when they saw Smoker falling into the ruins of the shops on the street. Kicked away. Colonel Marine was kicked to death by the second-in-command Beanos. Is this the one with a bounty of 400 million berries? Ace was also surprised. Although he knew that Colonel Marine was no match for Beanos, he didn't expect that he would be killed instantly. After all, Marine was a Logia fruit user like himself. This inevitably reminded Ace of the serious instructions given by Beanos when he was training him, to focus on his own physical skills and hockey training. He thought to himself, is it wrong, since I got the Mara fruit, I have been half abandoning my own physical skills and hockey training. Put all my energy into developing the fruit ability. Seeing Ace in a daze, Luffy beside him was full of pride and grinned. Hee, isn't that great? Beanos is now the first mate on my ship. Ace. His thoughts were interrupted, and Ace suddenly came back to his senses. Looking at Luffy's proud look, he didn't care, but was happy. Thinking of the time when the 4 brothers had gone through together when they were young, he was very happy. Of course, it would be great if Sabo was still alive. Luffy noticed a hint of sadness in Ace's eyes, and knew that Ace was thinking of Sabo. Although Luffy had felt sad like Ace before, he completely relaxed after Beanos told him that Sabo was not dead. As for telling Ace that Sabo is still alive, forget it for now. After all, Sabo is in the Revolutionary Army now, so it's better not to tell him in advance. There will always be a chance to meet in the future. After dealing with Smoker, Ace and the other two walked out of the dilapidated restaurant side by side, ignoring the shocked, fearful and frightened eyes around them, and walked on the street to chat. Kacha, cough cough. Smoker, who was kicked into the ruins, broke the stone pressing on his body and climbed out. Regardless of his embarrassment, he glared at the direction where Ace and the other two left, and took out a den mushi from his pocket. Are they not on the same level at all? At this time, the other end of the phone in his hand answered the call. Moshi, Moshi. Far away on the endless sea, a man wearing a white vest with a blue shirt inside and white trousers on the bottom, with a lazy look on his face, was leisurely riding a bicycle and sailing on the frozen sea. Kuzan Admiral, I'm Smoker. Ah, it's you. What's up? Smoker didn't hide anything and told the story of Straw Hat Crew appearing in Alabasta, and also revealed the whereabouts of Fire Fist Ace. Ah, really? It will take me some time to arrive in Alabasta. Smoker frowned. Will it take some time? I hope I can make it in time. After all, judging from the situation, Straw Hat Crew has just arrived in Alabasta. Yes, Admiral, I will keep an eye on the whereabouts of Straw Hat Crew during this period. Del. As the call was hung up, Smoker put the den mushi back in his pocket, reached out to wipe the blood stains on his mouth, and grumbled with gritted teeth. I hope you can continue to be proud. Straw Hat Boy. Benos. Hey, Ace, have you not fallen behind in your training in taijutsu and hockey in the past 2 years? Benos turned his head and looked at Ace with a serious expression. He had given strict instructions on Ace's taijutsu and hockey training. He was afraid that Ace would abandon his own taijutsu and hockey training after obtaining the power of the Mara fruit. After all, this was the fatal reason for Ace's defeat to Blackbeard. According to the original plot, there is not much time left for Ace. Benos doesn't know whether Ace will listen to his instructions. Ahahaha. Benos is still as strict as ever, don't worry. Ace was stunned and thought, I can't say that I was really guessed by Benos, right? Is it so obvious? But he still laughed awkwardly to break Benos's stern look at the moment. Then he looked at Luffy and asked curiously, Hey Luffy, didn't you recruit reliable partners? When talking about Zoro and the others, Luffy said proudly, now there are 6 people on the ship, including me and Benos. Although it has not reached my inner expectation, it will be soon. As he said that, Luffy introduced Zoro and the others to Ace. There is a swordsman who wants to become the world's greatest swordsman, and a navigator who likes Bailey and Orange and wants to draw a complete world map. Quote. Then there is the cook who can't walk when he sees a beautiful woman, and the sniper who speaks well and brags. Quote. And the partner who just joined us is a talking reindeer. His name is Chopper, and he is the ship's doctor. Ace was relieved when he heard Lou proudly introducing his partner, and at the same time he looked at Benos. Although they were brothers who had drunk sworn wine, Benos had never talked about his dream, which made Ace very curious. He asked, Hey, Benos, what is your dream? Me, Sia. Benos was stunned and looked up at Ace, and said in a deep voice, I want to know the truth of the blank 100 years that the world government tried hard to hide. After the voice fell, Ace, who was originally full of curiosity, suddenly became solemn. He had heard Whitebeard's father mention the blank 100 years of history. This blank 100 years of history is known as a taboo. It is strictly prohibited by Marine and world government. If Benos really wants to pursue it, he will definitely be hunted down by Marine and world government. It can even be said that with the world government, Marine is the enemy. Thinking of this, Ace wanted to ask Benos to give up the search for the answer, although Benos is very strong now, so strong that even he may not last long in Benos's hands. But thinking that Benos and Luffy will face the entire Marine and the giant world government behind them in the future, he felt worried. Benos saw Ace's worried expression, grinned, and said directly, Don't worry, I won't die easily. Everyone has their own dreams to pursue, and this is also their own choice, isn't it? Ace. Ace's body shook violently. Benos' words reminded him of his original intention and goal when he just went out to sea, to defeat the world's strongest man Whitebeard while sailing freely in the endless sea and become the pirate king. But after that battle, he recognized himself, and gave up the devil blood obsession that he had always resented in his heart, and joined Whitebeard pirates. As the eldest of the 4 brothers, he naturally supports them without reservation, and he is also clear about Benos's character. Once a decision is made, it will never be changed. Ha 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 ha. That's right. I hope we can all realize our dreams. Let the three of us take Sabo's efforts. Just as Ace and the other two turned a corner and walked towards an alley, a series of ferocious figures appeared in front of them. Not only that, behind them and on the rooftops on both sides, there were dense crowds of people, surrounding Ace, Luffy, and North. Ace looked around, each holding a sharp knife, a gun, and a dense crowd, revealing a helpless expression. Confirmed. These three are Bounty, 550 million Baileys, Captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Fire Fist, Ace. Bounty, 88 million Baileys. The Captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, Straw Hat Luffy. And the second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates, Beanoes, who is praised by the sea and can fight Hawkeye on equal terms, with a bounty of 400 million berries. Many bounty hunters, looking at the bounty list of Ace and the other three in their hands, could not hide their greed. Boss, this is a big order. If we capture these three people and hand them over to Marine, it will be more than 1 billion Baileys. Although we have the advantage in numbers now, we can't be careless. The opponent is Fire Fist Ace, Beanoes. Ah, what are these guys going to do? Why are you blocking our way, Ace? Luffy was puzzled by the people who kept surrounding them and asked. Idiot, they are looking for trouble with us. Ace put his hand on his forehead, showing full of helplessness, and scolded. Tisk, there are these ignorant ants everywhere. As he said, Ace shook his strong shoulders and planned to get rid of these bounty hunters. Wait, Ace's fruit ability is too troublesome. Leave it to me. Beanoes stretched out his hand to stop Ace, who was about to take action, and said lightly. Luffy knew Beanoes' intention, so he grinned and waited for Beanoes' next move. Ace frowned, and although he didn't say anything, it was undeniable that if he made a move, the nearby streets and buildings would probably be reduced to ruins. And compared to Luffy, Ace wanted to know how strong Beanoes was at the moment. After all, Beanoes was an equal to the world's greatest swordsman. Tap tap. Beanoes took 2 steps forward, looked around at the densely packed bounty hunters, and raised his mouth slightly. Then the terrifying aura around him continued to rise, raising a breeze, staring at the eyes in front of him, and a golden light flashed in his pupils in an instant. Buzz. ZZ. The terrifying pressure mixed with dark red lightning swept out in an instant. Ace behind him felt this terrifying momentum, and immediately showed a look of surprise, muttering in his mouth. Beanoes' Conquerors. Hockey. It's even more terrifying than 2 years ago. Bang, bang, bang. As Ace was surprised, the bounty hunters who had surrounded them rolled their eyes, foamed at the mouth, and fell heavily to the ground, losing all consciousness. If it was just the release of Conqueror's Hockey, Ace would not be surprised, but the Conqueror's Hockey released by Beanoes, mixed with dark red lightning, shocked him. He had only seen this scene on Whitebeard, but he didn't expect Beanoes to be able to do it. At this moment, Ace had to admit that Beanoes was much stronger than him in terms of talent and understanding. At this time, Ace suddenly remembered what Beanoes had said, and then looked at Luffy and asked. Hey Luffy, I remember Beanoes said that you and I both have the qualifications to awaken Conqueror's Hockey, right? Ah, it seems that he did say that. Luffy was stunned, and he touched his chin and recalled what he said before, and responded subconsciously. At the same time, he looked at Ace with a puzzled face and asked provocatively. Hee, Ace, you haven't awakened Conqueror's Hockey yet, right? Hearing Luffy's ridicule, Ace's mouth twitched suddenly, and he shouted at Luffy loudly. Who can't? I have awakened in the first year of my sea, okay. Facing Luffy's serious gaze, Ace became less and less confident, while Luffy showed a hint of pride and disgust on his face and spoke. Too bad, Ace. Although I can't control as accurately as Beanoes, I can also release Conqueror's Hockey at will now. Ace was so angry when he heard this that he wanted to press Luffy to the ground and rub him. He thought to himself, Luffy actually looked down on me. No, after I deal with Teach and go back, I must work hard to practice and control Conqueror's Hockey, and I can't fall behind in physical skills. Let's go. Beanoes naturally heard Luffy's provocation to Ace just now. He sighed in his heart and thought to himself, it seems that Ace still didn't listen to his words. Forget it, while there is still some time, let Ace master Armament Hockey first. I don't know if it will be in time. Luffy nodded slightly and raised his foot to follow Beanoes' footsteps. Looking at the backs of Luffy and Beano's, Ace behind them couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that Beano's would criticize him. After all, Beano's was very strict with their training. After walking out of the alley, Luffy, Beano's and Ace returned to the Mary docked at the seaside. Nami, Sanji and others also returned to the deck after replenishing supplies in the town. Luffy pulled Ace to the deck and introduced his companions one by one. Ace, they are my companions. Don't underestimate them. Their strength is very strong now. Even though you are a Logia Mera Mera fruit ability user. Ace was shocked and felt the breath of Zoro, Sanji and others. He showed an incredible look on his face and thought to himself, the breath of Luffy, Beano's and their companions. No way. It's okay that Beano's and Luffy can become so strong, but their companions are also monsters. When did a new pirate group that just went to sea not long ago become so terrible? Suppressing the shock in his heart, I hurriedly greeted everyone. Thank you for taking care of my two younger brothers. After a few greetings, the Mary left the coast and headed for the Baroque studio headquarters. However, as the Mary sailed out of the coast, several ships also quietly followed behind the Mary, and after sailing on the sea, several large ships accelerated and rushed towards the Mary. Vivi looked at the densely packed people on several large ships and the many guns aimed at them, and her face suddenly changed. It's those guys under the Baroque studio. Nami and Usopp glanced at Luffy unhappily, with a flash of complaint in their eyes. They thought that the reason they were exposed was that Luffy made some noise in the town again. Hee, I didn't expect it to be exposed. Luffy grinned, not caring about Nami and Usopp's complaining eyes, and was ready to fight. Chapter 91. Leave it to me this time. I can release my abilities unscrupulously on the sea. Ace, who had never had a chance to show off, couldn't hold back any longer. This time he wanted to perform well in front of Beano's, letting Luffy and Beano's see the Logia disaster. Beano's half lay on the sail, opened his sleepy eyes, and remained silent. Zoro Sanji didn't have any opinions, but showed a hint of expectation. Luffy is the brother of Beano's. I wonder how strong he is. Swoosh, Ace's mouth curled up slightly, and he suddenly jumped to the small boat behind the Mary ship. On several chasing ships, the head of the Baroque studio gave orders in a cold voice. Pull out all the shells and aim at the ships of the Straw Hat Sea Pirates in front. Blast them all into slag. Yes, sir. Fire. Boom boom. Instantly, countless shells bombarded the moving Mary, and the roar resounded through the surrounding sea. Ace grinned, raised his fist wrapped in blazing flames, jumped up, and with a roar, he blasted the shells in front of him and the big ship behind him. Fire fist. Boom boom. The high-temperature flames turned into a huge fist, melting all the incoming shells with an absolute crushing force, and directly smashed several large ships to pieces, with flames shining all over the surrounding sea. Under the burning of the high-temperature flames, the screams of tearing continued, and in the blink of an eye, they were buried in the sea together with the wreckage of the ship. Oh, so awesome. As expected of Ace, he destroyed them with one punch. Luffy looked at the ship that was burned to ashes by the flaming fist, his eyes suddenly lit up, and his face was full of envy. Can control fire. Is Ace also a demon fruit power? Usopp looked at the wreckage that was gradually sinking into the sea, turned his head and returned to the deck of Ace, and asked. Ace smiled confidently, stretched out his flaming index finger, pointed at the cowboy hat on his head, and responded. I am a natural crack Mera Mera fruit ability user. Chopper was full of surprise, and his short legs were not shy. He looked at Ace carefully and said. Oh, is this Logia? So awesome. It feels much bigger than the fruit abilities of me and Luffy. Quote. Hearing the compliment, Ace scratched his head awkwardly and laughed dryly twice. A complex look flashed in his eyes, thinking, powerful. If this was said when he first met Beano's and Luffy, he could still be proud of it. But just before returning to the coast to sail, he had a contest with Beano's, and the final result was a deep blow to him. Although he had the Logia Mera Mera fruit, it could not pose any threat to him in front of Beano's terrible slash. And the elementalization that he was proud of being immune to all physical damage was simply a child's play in front of Beano's hockey. This made him completely understand why Beano's reminded him so many times to focus on his own physical skills in hockey. Once his Mara fruit ability did not pose any threat to the enemy, or the fruit ability was suppressed by the opponent, he was just a pirate who was stronger than some pirates. Beano's. Sometimes Mara fruit ability, but it becomes a tiring process to become stronger. The foundation of becoming a strong person is to use one's own physical skills and hockey first. The old man didn't eat any devil fruit, and became a marine hero relying on his own physical skills and hockey alone. Recalling Beano's previous words, Ace seemed to think that the 2 years of going to sea were simply a joke. Thinking of this, Ace had already made a decision in his heart. He would take advantage of this reunion time to teach hockey to Beano's. Of course, Beano's, lying on the sail, was also making a solution for Ace's short training and decided to launch the Heaven-Defying of enlightenment to deduce the future. I hope that with this short enlightenment, Ace can change the original story of being defeated by Blackbeard, which led to the Summit War. A few days, early in the morning, Luffy looked at Ace, who was sorting out food and supplies, and asked with a look of reluctance on his face. "Are you leaving, Ace?" "Ah, yes." Ace hung the backpack on his back, pretending to be relaxed and free, and smiled. "The reason I came here, in addition to reuniting with you and Beano's, there is another more important thing." Speaking of this, Ace's face became solemn, and even revealed a hint of anger, and continued to speak. "That is to deal with a traitor." Zoro, Sanji and others were curious about what kind of guy was the man who could make the captain of the second team of the world's strongest Whitebeard pirates, Fire Fist Ace, personally hunt him down. "That guy is called Teach." "No, his current name is Blackbeard." Ace recalled that Blackbeard killed Thatch because of a devil fruit, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Beano's, who had originally planned to stop Ace, felt Ace's anger at the moment, sighed deeply and shook his head slightly. Although Ace at the moment, after the Heaven-Defying future deduction of his understanding, has greatly improved his physical skills and hockey training direction. But Beano's was not sure whether Ace could change the original plot. After a greeting with Luffy and others, Ace jumped off the small sailboat at the stern of the Mary and waved goodbye to Luffy and others on the deck. "I'm leaving, Luffy, Beano's and the Straw Hat crew. Thank you for your hospitality these days." After that, Ace used the power of the Mara fruit to propel the small sailboat, and B.0 sailed towards the endless sea at a high speed. Beano's stood on the top of the sail, watching the black spot gradually disappear on the sea. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and he muttered to himself, "No matter what the result is, Ace, this time I will never let the original drama happen again." The next morning, as the Mary docked at the coast, the Straw Hat crew decided to go to the city of Juba at Vivi's suggestion. Before the rebels launched a coup against the capital, Alabasta, expose Crocodile's conspiracy. That is where the rebels gathered. Their leader is called Kosa, who was my childhood playmate. As long as we find him and tell him all about Crocodile's conspiracy, we will be able to stop it all. Just when Vivi was about to take Pau de Coué to Yuba City, she was stopped by Beano's, who said in a deep voice, "Don't bother too much, just write 2 letters and ask Pau de Coué to take them to Yuba and Alba." Pau de Coué flapped his wings to express his dissatisfaction. "Quack, Chopper, why is it me again? You really don't treat me like a duck. Do you know how far Yuba and Alba are?" Seeing this, Beano's glanced at Pau de Coué, who was immediately frightened and stopped quacking and turned into a flattering look. "Let's go directly to the Baroque studio headquarters. Once the culprit is solved, the problem will naturally be solved." Hearing that there was no need to roast sweet potatoes in this desert with nothing, Luffy nodded in agreement. "Yes, since it's decided, I'll leave first." Ignoring the unanimous decision, he rode away in the direction of the rainy land, the Baroque studio headquarters, with great interest. "Ah, is this really okay?" Vivi looked at the yellow sand in front of her, covered her nose and coughed twice, and said worriedly, "Don't worry about him, Luffy won't be like Green Algae Head anyway, he can't get lost." Knight Sanji came to Vivi and took out the pen and paper and handed it to Vivi. "What are you talking about, perverted cook? Location is hard. Stretch your neck over here, I must chop you off now." As the quarrel between Zoro and Sanji intensified, the fierce kicking skills collided with the three-sword style, and the strong collision raised a cloud of dust. "Ding, ahem, here they come again. Can't these guys be quiet for a while?" Nami, Usopp quickly moved away from the battle range of the two, spitting out the yellow sand in his mouth, complaining with disgust. Under the threat of Beano's, he ran fast and cursed with Vivi's handwriting and rushed to Ba in the capital of Alba. Far away in the palace of the capital, King Cobra sat on the throne, holding Vivi's handwritten letter in his hand, tears welling up in his eyes. Before that, he received news that Ecolem was attacked and buried in the sea on his way back to Alabasta, and at the same time, his contact with Vivi was cut off. At that time, he thought that Vivi might have met with an accident, but now he was very excited to see this handwritten letter in the hall run fast. All this, it turned out to be the conspiracy of Crocodile. Cobra opened the letter without hesitation. The content of the letter shocked him, and then his face was gradually replaced by anger. As for Crocodile, he has always been treated as a hero in Alabasta, but he didn't expect that he was the culprit of the riot. After reading the letter in his hand, King Cobra slammed his big hand on the table. The anger on his face was indescribable, and even veins on his forehead popped out. I didn't expect that all this unrest was caused by Crocodile behind the scenes. Outside the palace, hearing the roar, Jacka hurried in. After learning everything, he was furious and asked Cobra to go to the Baroque Studios base camp, Rainy Land. King Cobra, give the order. I will lead the army to wipe out the Baroque Studio immediately and bring back Crocodile's head. Cobra did not respond, but gave some instructions to Pau de Kui, took out a letter from his pocket and put it on Pau de Kui. Pau de Kui nodded in response, and then ran towards the palace gate. Cobra watched Pau de Kui leave, turned his head and said in a deep voice, "Wait, let's put the Crocodile matter aside for now. Send someone to Yuba to tell Kosha that the king has something to discuss." Yaka was puzzled and asked anxiously, "Why, Your Majesty, shouldn't we send troops to the Rainy Land to kill the culprit?" Cobra shook his head slightly. In Vivi's handwritten letter, he mentioned that she had entrusted Straw Hat Crew to go to the Rainy Land, Baroque Studio. At the same time, in the current situation, he can only trust Vivi and Straw Hat Crew. After all, he has more important things to do now. What he has to do now is to prevent the civil war that is about to break out and avoid casualties. Presumably, Kosha on the rebel side has received Vivi's letter just like himself. Since the culprit has already known, the most important thing now is to resolve the misunderstanding with the rebels. Avoid the outbreak of war. Yaka heard King Cobra's story, was silent for a moment, and responded with a sigh. "Yes, King, I will contact the rebels immediately." Watching Jacka leave the palace, Cobra returned to the throne, holding Vivi's handwritten letter in his hand, and smiled fatherly. "I hope you can successfully overthrow Crocodile, Vivi and Straw Hat Crew." On the other side, Rainy Land, Baroque Studio headquarters. Led by 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile, Deputy, Mr. 1, except for Mr. 2 Bentham who ran away, all the remaining members of Baroque Studio gathered. At this time, in the dark, Robin's figure slowly walked to Crocodile and whispered, "Mr. Zero just got the news and went to intercept the Straw Hat Pirates. Several ships and billions were wiped out." "What?" Crocodile was surprised, and then became gloomy. Obviously, the Straw Hat Pirates had successfully angered him. He clenched his fists and snorted coldly. "HMPH. After my plan succeeds, I will deal with those ignorant little devils." After saying that, Crocodile originally planned to take his group of billionaires to the place where he could realize his dream of dominating. Brew, brew. At this time, the phone in Crocodile's pocket rang. Seeing that it was a call from the casino, his face showed a hint of impatience and responded coldly. "What's the matter, boss? It's not good." A group of incredible guys came to the casino. We are not. Kacha. Hearing the anxious narration of the casino manager on the other end of the Den Den Mushi, and the disconnected call. Because several billionaires were destroyed by Straw Hat Crew, Crocodile was furious. When he heard Eugen, there was trouble at the casino. The anger could no longer be suppressed, and he turned and headed for the casino. A bunch of ignorant little ants. Robin, his deputy, Mr. 1, and his billionaire members followed Crocodile's footsteps. Rain Feast Casino. The entire core area of the Rainland is also the largest gray industry under Crocodile's name. At a glance, the Rain Feast Casino is gorgeously decorated, with shining lights and expensive decorations. Boom boom. However, it was completely broken by the sound and loud noise. These guys dared to make trouble in the Rain Feast Casino. Don't they want to live? You know, the boss here is one of the world-famous 7 warlords of the sea, Crocodile. The gamblers around stared at the Straw Hat crew who were making trouble in front of them, and spoke angrily. Hey, where is the Straw Hat crew? Benos held the casino manager's neck and asked in a low voice. You ants are dead. When the boss comes, I will chop you into meat sauce. The casino manager suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Although all the bones in his body seemed to be broken, he still cursed. Yoho, you are quite stubborn. Benos's face suddenly turned cold, and he grabbed the casino manager's neck more and more tightly. Duh. At this time, the casino door was pushed open, and Crocodile came in with Robin and his deputy, Emery. The gamblers around saw that the person coming was 7 warlords of the sea Crocodile, and they all shouted for joy. Here he comes. He is Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. These guys who don't know how to live or die, I don't know where they get the courage to come to Shichibukai to make trouble. Ha ha ha. Seeing the appearance of the boss, the casino manager showed his arrogance and continued to shout at Benos in front of him. Ha ha ha. Our boss is here. Kid, let me go, maybe you can keep a body. Crack. However, before he could finish his words, the casino manager's neck was directly cut off by Benos and thrown in front of Crocodile and others. Bang. This guy is quite arrogant. I accidentally killed him. I guess you don't mind. Mr. Zero. No, it should be Sand Crocodile. Crocodile looked down at his subordinate who had lost his life after his neck was twisted, and his face became more gloomy. Robin beside him looked up at the voice, and a barely perceptible smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Crocodile suppressed his inner anger, stared at Benos in front of him, and spoke in a deep voice. You are worthy of being a newcomer valued by the Naval headquarters, Benos. If you have any dissatisfaction with my casino, you can move to another place to talk. It is not a choice of compromise but a war here. His casino's biggest asset will be reduced to ruins. As early as the first sight of entering the casino, Crocodile recognized the identity of Benos and the Straw Hat crew behind him. No need, we came here this time to drive you, the culprit who destroyed the stability of our country, out of Alabasta completely. At this time, Vivi, who was standing behind the Straw Hat crew, came out with uncontrollable anger on her face, looking at Crocodile. HMPH. Seeing Vivi's appearance, Crocodile's cold eyes were full of intense murderous intent. If it weren't for her, the agents he had sent out would not have been killed. She disrupted his deployment again and again, which he could not tolerate. Nefeltari Vivi, since you know everything, you can only be left behind. Quote. After saying that, Crocodile glanced at the group of Baroque studio members behind him and said in a calm voice. We will completely eliminate you. Yes, boss. Kill, kill. The Baroque studio members behind him all had fierce eyes, and each drew out sharp knives, guns and weapons, and rushed towards Straw Hat crew. These guys are finished. That's right, dare to provoke the 7 warlords of the sea, the end of these little devils is doomed. The gamblers around them looked at the evil Baroque studio members, who swarmed towards Straw Hat crew, showing disdain and ridicule. Facing the dense Baroque studio members, Luffy's mouth curled up slightly. The aura around him continued to surge, raising a breeze around him, and his eyes suddenly glared, and a flash of red light flashed in his pupils. Buzz. The terrifying pressure of Conqueror's Haki accurately avoided Nami. Vivi and the others burst out towards the entire casino. Boom. Crocodile sensed the terrifying pressure sweeping over him, and his originally gloomy face suddenly showed shock, and he murmured. This is Conqueror's Haki. Bang bang bang. At the same time, the members of the Baroque studio who rushed up, as well as the gamblers watching the show outside, suddenly stopped in their tracks. They rolled their eyes, foamed at the mouth, and fell heavily to the ground and lost all consciousness. As Conqueror's pressure dissipated, only Crocodile, Mr. who was shocked, and Robin, who was panting, were left in the casino. Sanji and Zoro behind him looked at the enemies lying down, and said with dissatisfaction on their faces. Hey, Luffy, don't release Conqueror's Haki casually, okay? The green algae head is right, we have to give us a chance to move. Luffy scratched his head with embarrassment, and was embarrassed to speak. Ah, I forgot, be careful next time. What, you want a next time? Zoro, Sanji's mouth twitched suddenly, and he roared at Luffy. Then the two looked at each other and said to Luffy, Benos at the same time. As captains, leave the enemy to us this time. The two ignored Luffy and Benos's response, and their bodies turned into a shadow and rushed towards Crocodile, Mr. 1. As early as entering the casino, Zoro felt the strong breath of Mr. 1 beside Crocodile. Muttered to himself, I hope this guy's strength can make the battle more fun. Mr. 1 realized that Zoro's target was himself, and thinking of the terrifying pressure just now, he did not careless at all, and immediately activated the ability of the quick slash fruit, turning his arms into sharp blades and heading forward. Ding! The sound of metal collision resounded, and a gust of air was stirred around the two. Boom! Zoro held the third-generation Kitetsu and exerted force, sending one chi flying. He sank his feet and swung the third-generation Kitetsu to Mr. 1, and the sound of blade collision echoed for a while. Ding ding! Under Zoro's fierce attack, M1 could only rely on the power of the fruit to block. Is that all? After several rounds of fighting, Zoro also figured out Mr. 1's strength, but there was still a flash of disappointment in his eyes. Swoosh! On the other side, Sanji was not to be outdone. He swept over Crocodile's head and raised his black foot to kick down fiercely. Minced meat! What a fast speed! Crocodile's face flashed with surprise, and then activated the elementalization, turning his whole body into yellow sand, with a proud and mocking look on his lips. But this kind of attack can't cause any real damage at all. The black foot passed through the yellow sand element, and the next moment Crocodile's poisonous golden hook stabbed towards Sanji's chest. It's over. Facing the approaching golden hook, Sanji quickly counterattacked, and his body turned 360 degrees in the air to block the attacking poisonous golden hook. Bang! Strong yellow sand airflow surged between the collision. Oh, so powerful. Sanji's kicking skills are stronger than before. That's right, but the fruit ability of 7 warlords of the sea crocodile is also Logia-like ace. Ordinary attacks can't cause any real damage at all. Outside the battlefield, the spectators Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper looked at the wonderful battle between Sanji and Crocodile, their eyes shining with gold, and said in surprise. Sanji landed steadily on the ground, lit a cigarette, put his hands in his pockets, and whispered softly. An element similar to Ace, as one of the 7 warlords of the sea, he is indeed much stronger than the guys he met before. Crocodile felt the power from Blackfoot just now, and a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. He didn't expect that just one crew member had such strength. Doesn't that mean that the Straw Hat crew and the kid named Benos are even stronger? How is this possible? You have to know that the Straw Hat crew is just a newcomer who has just been out to sea for a short time. Why did their strength grow so fast? No, I can't continue to be exhausted by this kid. I must use my strength to kill him. After all, he has more than one enemy at the moment. Crocodile raised his hand and gathered the yellow sand into a hand knife, turning it into a sharp knife. His body suddenly turned into a stream of sand and gathered into a human form behind Sanji. He raised the sharp knife gathered by the yellow sand and swung it down fiercely. Desert sword. No, Sanji, get out of the way. Vivi, who was on the sidelines, watched the yellow sand gather behind Sanji and shouted anxiously. Boom! A roar sounded, and smoke and dust filled the entire casino. As the smoke and dust dispersed, a crack was cut through the casino wall on the originally solid floor. Is it over? Crocodile's pupils moved around, and he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, but after years of combat experience, he suddenly realized something and looked up. Bang bang! Sanji was seen stepping on the air in midair, and his speed was getting faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, he came to Crocodile. It's even faster. Crocodile's pupils reflected Sanji's figure, and at the same time of surprise, a hint of sarcasm and disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said. But all your attacks can't cause any real damage. There's no point in continuing this battle. Although I have to admit that this kid is stronger than those pirates in the first half of the Grand Line in terms of speed and strength. But no matter how strong he is a Logia fruit user and can be immune to all physical damage. Robin, who was watching the battle from a distance, frowned slightly. Crocodile was right. All physical attacks can't cause any real damage to Crocodile. Only water can break the Logia sand fruit ability. Really, the Logia fruit ability is not without weaknesses. Sanji didn't need to continue to go in and test it. He suddenly raised his hardened right foot with armed color and swept towards Crocodile. For example, pop, barbecue beef feast. Crocodile didn't notice it at all and laughed arrogantly with his arms open. It's useless. All physical damage can't be done to Logia. The powerful sweep hit Crocodile's face solidly. Bang. Puff. Under the powerful force, Crocodile's mouth and nose were stained with blood, and his whole body was kicked out by Sanji like a cannonball. Boom boom. It broke through the solid wall of the casino and slid on the yellow sand for a distance before it barely stopped. How is it possible? Seeing Crocodile being kicked out, Robin looked incredible. He actually broke the rule that Logia could not cause substantial damage, and there was no water. While shocked, Robin smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth, glanced at the lazy and sleepy Beanos in the distance, and thought to himself, compared with Crocodile who was occupied by ambition, maybe the Straw Hat Pirates are not bad. However, before the dust settles, there is still an important thing to do. Robin did not hesitate to take advantage of the gap between Crocodile being kicked out and quietly left the casino. Beanos also noticed something at this time, opened his lazy eyes, watched Robin leave, and murmured. Go to Albana, boss. Mr. 1, who was fighting Zoro on the other side, saw Crocodile being kicked away, and resisted the sharp blades of the third-generation Kidetsu's arms, and suddenly burst out with full power. He pushed the third-generation Kidetsu away, and then did not hesitate to use the ability of the fast-slash-fruit to ultimate, turning the whole person into a sharp steel, with a slightly lowered body and crossed arms, and rushed towards Zoro. Slash, slash, slash. Swoosh. With the explosion of the fruit power, Mr. 1's breath continued to rise at this time, and he approached Zoro with absolute offense and defense. This attack is barely passable. Zoro snorted coldly, raised his hand and tightly grasped the third-generation Kidetsu, and took the attack of Mr. 1 head-on. Ding! The sword fell at close range, and the collision produced a clanging sound. At the same time, the blades touched for a moment, and sparks flew. Mr. 1 was stunned. Seeing that his fierce attack was easily blocked by the green-headed swordsman in front of him, he showed disbelief on his face. You have to know that at this time, he has already exerted the ability of the fast-slash-fruit to the ultimate, which means that it is not unshakable. Not only that, Mr. 1 vaguely felt a pain coming from his sharp arms. Zoro would not show mercy. He kept waving the third-generation Kidetsu in his hand, and beat Mr. 1 back step by step. He even gave up attacking and turned to defense, crossing his sharp arms in front of him, but the swinging and slashing with the sword intent still made Mr. 1's body like a solid sharp blade scratch 10 scars. It's over. Obviously, Zoro didn't want to play with Mr. 1 at this time. Although Mr. 1 had some strength, this strength alone could only warm up Zoro, long. Giving up on the slash, he put the third-generation Kidetsu back into the scabbard, tightly grasped the scabbard of the Goto Ikimonji with his left hand, and placed his right hand on the hilt. He lowered his body slightly, and took a force-pushing posture. Boom! At this moment, the terrible sword aura on Zoro suddenly surged. This terrible aura, feeling the surging aura on Zoro and the scars all over his body, Mr. 1 still did not flinch. On the contrary, Zoro's actions made Mr. 1 angry. You know, he is the strongest deputy under the 7 warlords of the sea. How could he lose to this newcomer who just went to sea? Is this the last attack? I will never let you succeed. Ha! Accompanied by a roar, Mr. 1's dull steel-sharp body became shining, and at the same time, the hardness of his body completely surpassed steel. Zoro raised his head with a cold look in his eyes, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. He held the hilt of the knife with his right hand and murmured. Ito Ryu Ii. Pop. The white handle that was originally tightly grasped was instantly covered by armament hockey. Die. The moment he drew his sword, Zoro's figure was as fast as lightning and swiped into M1's body. Lion Song Song. When Mr. 1 came to his senses, Zoro had already appeared behind him, and put the Wado Ikimonji in his hand back into the sheath. Bang. Puff. Ah! Mr. 1's chest, which was as hard as steel, was torn apart, and a large amount of blood spurted out to splash around. With a violent scream, Mr. 1's figure fell heavily, and the blood stained the exquisite carpet red. Oh, as expected of Zoro, he is so powerful. The spectators Luffy, Usopp, and Chopper saw Zoro defeat his opponent, and they all showed envy on their faces. Vivi was shocked. She never thought that Straw Hat crew, in addition to Luffy and Beano's, Zoro's strength is also so terrifying. You should know that Mr. One's strength is second only to Crocodile. Tong Nang can kill him in 10 moves. But these are still too slow in Zoro's opinion. If he hadn't enjoyed the fun of fighting, Mr. One would have been killed in 1 second. On the other side, Crocodile, who was kicked away by Sanji, had not yet recovered from Sanji's release of armament haki, but saw that his most proud deputy was killed in 1 blow. Get out, a bunch of brats. Suddenly, the anger in his heart rose sharply, and his body turned into a yellow sand, and he was bound to wipe out these brats here. Although he still couldn't believe it in his heart, a newcomer could use the powerful move of the second half of the Grand Line, haki. But now there is no way to retreat, and such a terrible brat must not be allowed to live. Hey, pervert, don't delay and retreat. Zoro put away the knife head and glanced at the air. Sanji walked back to the team and said disdainfully, HMPH, stop talking nonsense, green algae. Sensing Crocodile's breath approaching rapidly, Sanji snorted coldly, raised his black foot hardened with armament haki, and rushed forward. Having just suffered a loss from armament haki, Crocodile at this moment no longer had the contempt as before, and was fully focused, playing the king's second spirit. He stretched out the sharp blade condensed by the yellow sand and pierced through Sanji in front of him. Ding! Sanji was not to be outdone, and kicked the yellow sand blade with his black foot covered with armament haki. The strong collision and vibration affected the entire Rain Feast casino, and a turbulent flow was set off around. What about haki? In front of the powerful Logia disaster, you can only accept the fate of death. Crocodile landed steadily on the ground, a sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, the aura around him surged, and he raised his right hand, and a strong storm continued to gather in his palm. Sandstorm. Who raised his hand towards Sanji, threw it out, and the terrible sand gradually became huge, accompanied by a violent howling wind, sweeping, and the size became like a natural disaster, covering Sanji and even the entire casino. Point 0. Luffy and other spectators in the field quickly left the affected area. This is a sandstorm. And Vivi, who had not yet reacted, was grabbed by Beano's by the shoulders and disappeared on the spot. Beano's, Luffy, aren't you going to help? Vivi looked at the entire casino and Sanji, who were ravaged by the powerful sandstorm and gradually turned into a ruin, with a face full of worry, and shouted. What a big sandstorm, it has rolled the entire casino into ruins. Usopp pulled down the sniper glasses from his forehead and said, It's over, it's over. My Bailey. Looking at everything rolled up by the sandstorm, Nami sat on the ground with a face full of despair, regretting it. Hearing Nami's complaint, Vivi's mouth twitched suddenly, full of speechlessness. Thinking, it seems that these guys don't care about Sanji's safety at all. Luffy and others are used to it and continue to return their attention to the battlefield. Don't worry, Sanji won't be defeated so easily. Just watch. Beano's took Vivi away from the affected area and spoke lightly. After this period of digestion and training, Sanji's strength is now at a completely different level than in the sea restaurant. He has grown into a reliable partner. As the sandstorm subsided, the originally gorgeously decorated Rain Feast casino was now reduced to a ruin. Tap tap. Crocodile was surrounded by yellow sand and walked towards the Straw Hat crew with a hideous smile on his face. Although the annoying guy was solved at the cost of the Rain Feast casino, the bounty of the bounty can be compensated by completely solving this gang of little ghosts. The next thing is, bang, puff. Just when Crocodile was about to kill all the Straw Hat crew in one go, a powerful flying kick covered with armament haki hit Crocodile's chest. Ah! The intense pain made Crocodile scream, and with blood flying, his whole body flew backwards and crashed into the ruins. Boom boom. 913. Great, Sanji is fine. Seeing that Sanji was intact, Vivi's original worries were completely relaxed. Crack. Crocodile was kicked into the ruins, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He gasped and covered his collapsed chest with his hands. The severe pain stimulated the nerves in his brain. This feeling, since he lost to the old man Whitebeard, he left the second half of the Grand Line and came to the first half of Alabasta. He had never suffered such a serious injury, kid. Crocodile raised his eyes full of murderous intent, staring at Sanji and the Straw Hat crew behind him, gritting his teeth. He raised his hand to condense the fruit power again and rushed towards Sanji. What a troublesome Logia fruit power. Sanji stood where Crocodile was just now, leaned sideways and lit a cigarette, and faced the attack calmly. Crocodile stretched out his hand to control the yellow sand. For a moment, the yellow sand around Sanji's feet was agitated like red water, accompanied by a roar. Desert sword. Swoosh. A huge blade of yellow sand suddenly protruded from under Sanji's feet and pierced through Sanji's chest at a speed visible to the naked eye. Benos, who was watching the battle from a distance, saw this lazy look and suddenly became energetic. This move was seen in the original book during the Summit War. When Akainu was chasing Luffy Jinbei, Crocodile used this move to launch a surprise attack and cut Akainu's body in half. Of course, it did not cause any harm to Akainu in the end. Sensing the danger coming from under his feet, Sanji did not hesitate and disappeared again. During this period of time, Sanji not only mastered armament hockey, but also began to master observation hockey. Swoosh. Crocodile's face sank, his whole body tensed, his eyes looked around, and even the sky above his head was not spared. Whispering with gritted teeth, "This kid's speed." But the next second, a devilish voice came into Crocodile's ears. "You can't rely on elementalization to avoid any real damage, so your strength is just that." Crocodile's body couldn't help but tremble, staring at the Blackfoot that was approaching his forehead. At some point, his pupils suddenly dilated. Boom. There was a vibration, and Crocodile was kicked away by Sanji, sliding on the ground for a distance, and then relying on the sand wall condensed by the fruit ability to stop. Kid. Crocodile's eyes were covered with murderous intent. Being hit in the head twice by a new kid was simply a shame for him. Die. Crocodile's lower body turned into an element and flew towards Sanji at a high speed. Desert Diamond Sword. Crocodile frantically gathered all the yellow sand with both hands, and a huge blade appeared in an instant, with cold light reflecting the blade's sharpness. This blow was enough to destroy the solid wall. Sanji raised his curly hair, his face became solemn, and he didn't intend to delay the battle. His whole body began to spin like a gyroscope. As the rotation speed increased, the originally pitch-black Blackfoot was gradually covered by orange flames. Whispering in a low voice, "Devil Wind Kick. Oh. Sanji's new trick. So cool. I want to learn it too." The Straw Hat crew and others in the distance saw this scene and were surprised. Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp even had golden light in their eyes. Swoosh. Sanji's entire body turned into a stream of light and rushed directly towards the huge blade. He raised his flaming right foot and kicked it out. Devil Wind Kick Level 3 Minced Meat. Buzz. Ding. The flame-flying kick hit the huge blade heavily, and the terrifying force instantly disintegrated the solid blade until it shattered. Crack. Boom. Accompanied by a shattering sound, the huge blade was completely shattered into countless yellow sand. Crocodile's eyes widened, looking at the attack he was proud of, which was actually kicked to pieces by the curly eyebrow in front of him. He shook his head wildly, with disbelief on his face. Impossible. How could this guy possibly kick my attack? However, Sanji's figure did not stop because of the huge blade he kicked to pieces. He quickly flew in front of Crocodile and spoke in a deep voice. "It's over." With a pop, the right foot that was burning with flames was suddenly wrapped in armament hockey and kicked towards Crocodile's chest. Devil Wind Leg Beef Feast. Crocodile's eyes widened, and he used all his fruit ability to enter elementalization and escape, but in front of armament hockey, Crocodile had no chance of escaping at all. No. Boom boom. Crocodile suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood, and felt severe pain in his internal organs. His body turned into a cannonball and fell towards the vast yellow sand mountain. Puff. Boom. Vivi covered her mouth with her hand, looking at Crocodile in the distant yellow sand mountain, losing his ability to fight, her eyes moist, tears running down her face. Finally, the culprit who plunged Alabasta into dire straits was finally defeated. Sanji lit a cigarette, puffed out smoke, posed in the most handsome pose, and said lightly, "After this battle, my reputation will surge around the world, and my bounty portrait will definitely be more handsome than that guy Benos, so that more beautiful fans will know the existence of this knight." The next second, the knight's handsome posture was broken, and his calm face turned into a dog-licking look, waving at Nami and Vivi in the distance. Nami-chan, Vivi-chan. Seeing this scene, Nami's mouth twitched, and she held her forehead with helplessness, looked at the casino that had become a ruin, sighed, and complained. It's a pity for so many Baileys. It's all Sanji's fault. If I had known earlier, I would have let Luffy or Beanos take action. Vivi looked at Sanji's dog-licking face and was not cold at all. At this moment, she was only because Crocodile was defeated so that Alabasta could be restored to its original prosperity. Vivi walked to Crocodile, who was seriously injured and unconscious on the ground. There was no pity in her eyes, but murderous intent rose. She gritted her teeth and pulled out a dagger from her waist, muttering, "Atone for the dead people of Alabasta." Just when the dagger was about to pierce Rockdale's chest, a big hand tightly grasped the dagger that was about to pierce his chest. "Stop it. If Crocodile dies here, I'm sure Marine and the world government will hold Alabasta accountable. This will only drag the originally chaotic country into the abyss." Beanos grabbed the dagger and spoke indifferently. "Although the plot has gone off track, Crocodile can't die here now." Vivi's body shook violently. Looking at Crocodile, who was now seriously injured and unconscious, she wanted to cut him into pieces. But thinking of what Beanos said, she finally sighed deeply, put the dagger back into the sheath, and turned away silently. She was a little dissatisfied in her heart, but for this Alabasta, she had to give up. After all, it was the Straw Hat Pirates who defeated Crocodile, and she had no right to intervene. On the other side, the rebel leader Kosa, who received Vivi's handwritten letter. Knowing that Shichibukai Crocodile used dancing powder to frame the king, and even pretended to be the king, causing destruction, causing the entire country to fall into turmoil. Without hesitation, he sent an envoy to contact King Cobra in the capital, and held talks in person. After the misunderstanding was resolved, a settlement was reached. At the same time, the crimes of the culprit Baroque Studio were announced at the first time. As the war came to an end, the people burst into tears and shouted loudly, We wronged His Majesty the King. Baroque Studio, Shichibukai Crocodile. All this is these evil pirates, framing His Majesty the King." The remnants of the Baroque Studio members hiding in the dark were shocked to see the failure of the boss's plan and the news from the rainy land. After confirming the authenticity of the news, they were like dead ashes. They didn't expect that Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, would be defeated. "Your Majesty, look." Jaka and Bell looked at the countless people gathered under the palace, cheering for Cobra, and were so excited that they burst into tears, as if they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Boom. At this time, the sky that was originally sunny was covered by dark clouds, accompanied by thunder. Hualala, countless raindrops, as if they were constantly flowing, irrigated this land swallowed by drought. Cobra stood on the top of the city, enjoying the long-lost heavy rain, and the countless people below, cheering and smiling. Ah, the dust has finally settled. The camera returns to the rainy land. At Vivi's invitation, he took the Straw Hat crew to the capital Albana. Ahem. Crocodile, who was seriously injured on the yellow sand mountain, struggled to stand up, covering his chest burned by the high-temperature flames with his hands, and the pain was ripping his nerves. Straw Hat crew. Looking up at the direction where the Straw Hat crew left, his face was distorted, and he was trying to climb the fire. Tap tap. At this moment, a man wearing a Marine Colonel uniform, with a silver-white big back hair on his head and 2 cigars in his mouth, was Smoker. Smoker had been secretly following the whereabouts of the Straw Hat Pirates. Of course, he had also investigated the crimes committed by Baroque Studio and Crocodile in Alabasta. Smoker waited for Crocodile to finish fighting with the Straw Hat crew, and took advantage of Crocodile's serious injury to arrest him. "Shichibukai Crocodile, your crimes in Alabasta have been exposed, come with me. Your next destination is to spend time in Impel Down." Crocodile dragged his seriously injured body, snorted with disdain, and spoke gloomily. "HMPH, a small Marine colonel wants to arrest me. Those guys in Naval headquarters are too contemptuous." Although seriously injured, Crocodile will not give up resistance obediently, and the Logia Sand Fruit ability is activated. The battle is about to start. Facing Smoker, who is also a Logia, and is still in his prime, facing the seriously injured Crocodile, the gap in strength still exists. Both of them are Logia demon fruit power. Without the shortcomings of Haki and fruit, it is difficult to determine the winner in a short time. However, as the battle continued, Crocodile's physical strength was gradually exhausted. Smoker quickly seized the opportunity, and with the Seastone 10 hands that restrained all fruit abilities, he hit Rockdale, who was defeated by Lee, completely losing his fighting power. In the end, Crocodile and Mr. One were arrested by the Marine Naval Headquarters. With Crocodile arrested, the incident in Alabasta was transmitted to the Naval Headquarters. Sengoku looked down at the report in his hand and the pictures taken during the battle between Sanji and Crocodile, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Straw Hat Pirates Chef Vinsmoke Sanji, a newcomer with physical skills and kicking skills, Haki, could actually defeat Shichibukai Crocodile. What kind of monsters are recruited on the pirate ship? Vinsmoke. That family. Sengoku looked at the surname, his face became solemn, and he quickly ordered the engineers to start to find out Sanji's identity. Then he specified the reward amount, and the portrait was modified, which was unbearable to watch. Handing the newly printed portrait to the soldier, Sengoku thought for a moment and spoke calmly. Increase the bounty of Blackfoot Sanji to 75 million berries. Yes, Marshal. Being able to defeat Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, his strength is unquestionable, but for some reason, the bounty can only be so. Garp, who was lying on the sofa pretending to sleep, frowned as he watched the Marine soldiers leave. He cursed inwardly. Sengoku, what are you trying to hide? A newcomer who can easily defeat Shichibukai is worth 75 million Baileys. Or is it that the kid named Sanji on Luffy's ship has a strong backer, so that a higher bounty cannot be issued for him? Pa, my 2 grandsons also have backers, but you, Sengoku, actually issued a bounty of 400 million and 88 million Baileys. Do you really think I don't exist? Bang! Garp yawned with his nose bubble bursting, and said to Sengoku with dissatisfaction. Hey, Sengoku, what are you doing? Defeating one of the warlords is worth 75 million Baileys. I won't sit in the position of Marshal. Get down as soon as possible and let the new generation go. Hearing Garp's questioning tone, Sengoku showed a look of disgust on his face, lowered his head and didn't bother to argue with Garp, and said lightly. For some reasons, I can only do this. As Sanji's bounty list continued to be printed, the Straw Hat crew far away in the Alabasta Palace was warmly welcomed by King Cobra and countless people. At the grand banquet, led by King Cobra, Princess Vivi and a group of palace ministers warmly entertained the benefactor who saved the country. Vivi looked at the streets that were once again bustling and prosperous, and the people were laughing and talking, and tears unconsciously appeared in the corners of her eyes. She reached out to wipe her tears, turned her head and looked at the Straw Hat crew at the banquet, with a look of reluctance on her face, which also meant the next farewell. The capital and even the whole of Alabasta ended the night with bright lights and laughter. But with the news that the Straw Hat Pirates defeated the 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile exposed, Marine would naturally not let the Straw Hat crew go. At the same time, the Alabasta incident also attracted the attention of the world government in the Holy Land Marinjoa. At the top of the Red Line, there stands a magnificent building, which is the highest power center in the world. In a luxuriously decorated office, 5 old men in black suits gathered together. What a waste. One of them was a bald old man wearing a white kimono and a pair of round-framed glasses. His eyes revealed a sharp look and he wiped the samurai sword in his arms. Venus, a Zambaran v Nasujuro saint. As one of the 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile, he was defeated by a group of rookies. The tall old man with short blonde hair and beard holding a book behind the sofa spoke calmly. Jupiter, Shepherd 10 Pit Saint. Monkey D. Luffy, Beanos. Is one of them Garp's grandson? The fat old man with his hands on his chin, a splayed beard, and a birthmark on his forehead frowned, with a flash of anger in his eyes. Mercury, top man Vochuli Saint. What does Garp do for a living? That dragon guy is fine, but now there's Monkey D. Luffy. In my opinion, the Straw Hat Pirates have no need to exist. Let Marine take action to nip this unstable factor in the bud. Single quote. With the previous experience of Monkey D. CEFB Dragon, the anger of the decision rate rose. The existence of D was not allowed. If it were not for Garp's great contribution to marine, how could the world government tolerate it? For example, the D in the original pirate King Gol D. Roger was deliberately changed to Goldo Roger by them. After all, the existence of D is a taboo. But what Crocodile did in Alabasta is indeed not suitable for selling gardens. Beside Azamburn v. Nasushoro Saint, an old man with long silver hair, long beard and narrowed eyes spoke in a calm voice. Marcus Saint. The 7 warlords of the sea lost one person, which caused the original balance of the sea to be broken. For this, we must re-select the position to replace Crocodile. Quote, the last one, an old man with white curly hair, a silver beard, a scar on his left eye, a black flat hat, and a cane in both hands. Saturn. Jagarcia Satan Saint. The existence of the 7 warlords of the sea is to balance the sea and to check and balance the New World 4 emperors. Like a sharp blade, it puts the 3-party lineup on hold. But now the 7 warlords of the sea Crocodile, where Alabasta is, can no longer continue to serve. This also means that the checks and balances arranged by the world government have been broken, and it is necessary to select strong ones to make up for it. Azamburn v. Nasturo Saint's eyes flickered, and his voice was indifferent. Defeat Crocodile's Straw Hat crew, notify Sengoku, and let Marine solve it. Especially the D word, even though it is the grandson of Garp. Agree. The other 4-5 elders frowned slightly and nodded in agreement. Alabasta. The next morning. At this time, the East Port was filled with countless people coming to see them off. The Straw Hat crew stepped onto the deck with the gratitude of many people. Where is Vivi? Won't she come to see us off? Usopp looked at the countless people and some ministers below, but did not see Vivi, and asked in confusion. No way, although we are just a commissioned relationship, we have helped her save the entire Alabasta. Ah, Vivi-chan shouldn't be. Nami and others also reacted, looked around and did not see Vivi's figure, and talked about it. Just as the Mary was leaving the port, Vivi, wearing a gorgeous skirt in the distance, rode on the back of the fast runner, stood on the hillside of yellow sand, and shouted. I once participated in a short adventure, which was the darkest in my life, and I couldn't touch the end. As Vivi's voice resounded, it passed through Donggang and even the ocean, reaching the ears of all the people and ministers. Vivi, Luffy and others on the deck looked in the direction of the voice. On the yellow sand hillside, a girl with long blue hair and beautiful clothes was Vivi. The people looked at Princess Vivi on the yellow sand hillside in the distance, with doubts and questions on their faces. That's Princess Vivi. Why did she come to see us off in person? You know, she is the noble princess of our Alabasta. Humph, why not? If it weren't for the Straw Hat crew who dealt with the guy from the Baroque studio, our country would probably be in a civil war now. Just as the farewell ceremony was about to end, several black spots appeared on the sea in the distance. As the black spots gradually approached, they turned out to be marine warships. Marine warships? Why did they get here? Could it be that these marines are looking at the Straw Hat pirates? At this time, when everyone saw this scene, they immediately showed worry on their faces. What an annoying fly. Standing on the commanding heights of the sailboat, Benos looked at the marine warships approaching them, and a hint of impatience appeared on his face. Bang, bang, bang. Putting his hand on the handle of the large sword, the Thunder God sword, at his waist, he stared at the shells that were rapidly attacking the Mary, and suddenly swung an unstoppable and terrible slash. Jung, accompanied by Vivi's voice resounded, and she slashed wherever she passed. The sea roared, the waves were crisscrossed, and in the blink of an eye, the sky-high artillery fire was completely destroyed. Since I left the country, I have truly realized the vastness of the ocean. There I saw many incredible and vibrant islands. There are many creatures I have never seen before, unexpected scenery, and the music played by the waves is sometimes peaceful, as if it contains a trace of troubles, and flows gently. Sometimes I laugh so hard that it seems to tear apart my fragile thoughts. Vivi's voice, as if transcending time and space, slowly reflects this memory, and people can't help but think of the vastness of the sea. Everyone on the shore is immersed in listening quietly. Straw Hat crew listened to Vivi's singing from afar, smiled lightly at the corners of their mouths, and responded to the threat of the incoming artillery shells. Hey, Usopp, don't be confused, aim the rudder at the marine in front. Quote. Ah, oh, Immediately, the highest commodore on the deck of the warship was furious when he saw the cannonballs being destroyed by the fierce slash. This time he had received an absolute order from his superiors to stop the Straw Hat crew from going out to sea. Waste. I will pull out all the cannonballs and aim at the Straw Hat crew's pirate ship. I will definitely sink it. The Marine soldiers under his command received the order and hurriedly pulled out all the cannonballs for loading. Yes, Your Excellency Commodore. Boom boom. A new round of cannonballs flew, and the roar was deafening, but it still couldn't cover up Vivi's clear voice. Everyone, I'm here to say goodbye to you. I'm sorry. I can't sail freely on the endless sea with you, but I will remember the care you have always given me. Although I can't sail with you, I believe that we will meet one day in the future. I, Vivi, will always be a partner of Straw Hat crew. Vivi looked at the gradually receding Mary, raised her arm and carved the symbol of X, which turned into tears. Vivi, Princess Vivi. At the port, everyone couldn't help but burst into tears. This was their princess and the future queen of Alabasta. Thank you, Straw Hat crew. At this time, King Cobra, Bell, Gaka and other ministers who should not have appeared here appeared on the hillside piled with yellow sand, looking at the Mary in the distance, silently thanking in their hearts. If there were no Straw Hat crew, Alabasta would be in dire straits now. At the same time, after this time, Vivi also grew up, no longer the girl who never grew up and would only cry in the corner when encountering things. On the Mary, Luffy and others did not respond, but everyone raised their arms, and under the sunlight, the symbol of X, representing their partners, was transmitted. Vivi bit her lips tightly, tears could not stop flowing down her cheeks, even the fast runner under her crotch also shed tears, opened her mouth and shouted loudly, as if to express something to the Straw Hat crew. Jung. Boom boom. What a boring marine. Benos raised his arm with an X carved on it, swung his knife to destroy the incoming shells, and stared at the approaching marine warship. That's it, because the plot is about to end. After saying that, Benos released the terrible sword intent around him like a flood, his feet sank, and his whole body flew high into the sky, using Moonwalk, one of the 6, and stood in the air. That's Moonwalk, one of the Marine 6 styles. How could Benos know the Marine secret technique? On the other side, Smoker, who was driving a warship to jointly encircle the Straw Hat crew, looked up at Benos standing in the sky, with disbelief in his eyes. Not good. Smoker came back to his senses and saw the blade of the Thunderblade in Benos's hand gradually covered by black. He was shocked and took out the Den Den Mushi to contact the marine warship that intercepted the Straw Hat crew. Aikito Ryu return. But it was too late. Benos's cold voice sounded, accompanied by the surging of terrible sword intent. Jung. The light blue light cut through the sea, covering the eyes of all the Marines on the warships. Within 100 meters, all the Marine warships. In an instant, they were completely swallowed up by the terrible slash, turned into countless broken wreckage, and buried in the sea with all the Marines. Looking at the sturdy warships swallowed by the slash and turned into wreckage, Smoker widened his eyes, and the Den Den Mushi he wanted to contact was crushed, and he roared. Benos. Smoker and Tashigi watched the Mary gradually disappear into the sea. Although they were furious, they could only watch all this happen. Smoker has realized that it is not that they are too weak, but that the gap in strength between them and Benos and Straw Hat crew is not at the same level. Pirates of the level of Straw Hat crew are no longer something they can deal with. Smoker clenched his fists, the anger in his pupils was not concealed, and at the same time, he showed a hint of determination and whispered in a low voice. Benos, Straw Hat crew, even if we can't stop you from moving forward, there is someone in front who can definitely shatter your beliefs. Swoosh. Benos landed steadily on the deck, raised his eyes and smiled at Luffy and others. Things here have come to an end, it's time to start the next adventure. Oh. Luffy and the others nodded, set the sailing again, and set off towards the next unknown adventure. Woo, Vivi-chan. Only the Knight Sanji wiped his tears with reluctance, and was moved. It's too ugly, you pervert. Zoro crossed his arms and said with disdain. Shut up, Greenhead, what's up? Sanji, who was originally sad, raised his black foot and kicked Zoro. Of course, Zoro did not show any weakness and quickly drew his 2 swords to block. Dang. The strong collision caused a gust of air around the two, but the two still had no intention of stopping and fought together. Usopp put his hands on his hips and directly ignored the two people fighting behind him, boasting triumphantly. Under the leadership of my Captain Usopp, even the 7 warlords of the sea are just scum. Luffy Chopper looked at Usopp, whose haki was leaking, and his eyes were full of stars. Oh, really? Usopp is so powerful. Luffy scratched his head as if he noticed something was wrong, and retorted. What captain? I'm the captain. Don't bother with such details. Just as everyone was having fun, the door of the cabin was pushed open, attracting the attention of the Straw Hat crew. Squeak. Sanji and Zoro, who were still fighting to the death, stopped fighting immediately. Then a tall beauty with short black hair and sallow skin came into everyone's sight. This guy is not Crocodile's partner. What's her name? Nico Robin. What's going on? How did she appear on the Mary? Luffy and others looked at Robin, who suddenly appeared on the Mary, and were surprised. Nami quickly alerted, holding the weather stick as if facing a great enemy, and asked coldly. Why are you on our ship? Although she didn't know why this woman appeared here, she remembered that this guy threw away the group of Rockdale and others and ran away secretly at the Rain Feast Casino. In her opinion, such a guy who casually abandoned his partner must not be allowed to stay on their ship. Robin did not respond, but smiled slightly, which made Nami, Usopp, and Chopper look solemn. As the right-hand man of Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Robin left Nami and the others with only hostility. After all, this woman was almost Vivi's person at Whiskey Peak. Zoro and Sanji did not speak, but showed a vigilant look, always paying attention to Robin's movements. Okay, everyone, don't be so hostile. She is already our crew member. Just as the atmosphere on the deck became solemn, Benos fell from the sail to the deck, came to Robin, and explained to Nami and others. Except for Luffy, Nami and others showed surprised expressions after hearing Benos' story. His brows were tightly furrowed and he said in a deep voice. Hey, Benos, are you kidding me? This girl is Crocodile's partner, and her origin and identity are not ordinary women. Not only that, in the rain, this guy threw Crocodile and ran away. How can she be our partner? Nami and others raised objections one after another, and looked at Luffy at the same time. After all, Luffy is the captain of this ship. You said it, right, Luffy. Hearing this, Luffy's face did not have a hostile look, but a calm face, and responded. Ah, she is indeed our partner now. What? Nami, Usopp, and Chopper were shocked, and couldn't believe what Luffy just said, and shouted at Luffy loudly. Hey, Luffy, what's wrong with you? Usopp was excited and pointed at Law. Look carefully, this guy is extremely dangerous. I heard that when she was only 8 years old, she completely destroyed her hometown and was listed as a demon child by the world government. Luffy, are you listening to me? Seeing that Luffy had no reaction, Usopp couldn't help but remind him loudly. There are many rumors about Nico Robin, the demon child, such as ominous people who will bring disasters. But Nico Robin has been wanted by the world government since he was 8 years old, and the bounty is as high as 79 million Baileys. In this regard, how could Nami, Usopp, Chopper and others let such a guy become a member of the Straw Hat Pirates? Compared with Usopp's questioning, Zoro turned his eyes to Benos and spoke lightly. Hey, Vice Captain, aren't you going to explain? Benos stretched out his hand and yawned, with a sleepy face, and responded helplessly. Ah, isn't it time to wait until they are done? Then, Benos looked at Luo Yuan beside him and gestured. Robin nodded slightly, a trace of sadness flashed across his face, and narrated. Indeed, since I was 8 years old, I have been framed and wanted by the world government. In the following 20 years, I have disappeared and lived on this sea. As for the battlefield in the rain, you quietly abandoned Crocodile and ran away alone. Robin smiled bitterly, shook his head slightly and continued. Between Crocodile and I, we are just using each other. He just likes my ability to interpret history. Of course, with the identity of Crocodile of the 7 warlords of the sea, I naturally don't have to hide. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.